eNCA, the Tobacco Institute of Southern Africa, saying this afternoon that SARS, the revenue service, has lost something in the region of 7 billion rand in tax payments last year due to illegal cigarette sales. The finding is contained in a report by the Ipsos research group. It was commissioned by the Institute. That is important. It says illicit sales flourished after former SARS Commissioner Tom Moyani's appointment in 2014. Two guests with us now on the channel, Tobacco Institute of Southern Africa's Francois van der Merwe and Sinihlanhla Nguni, who is the chairperson of the Fair Trade Independent Tobacco Association. Mr. van der Merwe, to you first of all, why did you commission the study?
We commissioned the study because the legal volumes and the legal industry is bleeding in this country. And we had to get some independent research into this, an arm's length away from us, robust study, methodology, to tell us what's going on in the market. And the findings were released today, and it was shocking. And what we asked them to do is, the minimum tax owed on a packet of cigarettes is 17.85 rand. And we said to them, go and see in the market what sells below that, because we believe that if cigarettes are sold below the tax rate, must be illegal. There's also a judgment.
How did they determine that?
The tax rates. The excise is announced by the Minister.
No, not the excise. How did they determine that the right amount wasn't being paid?
Well, they did a retail audit. They did their own retail census to map the retail outlets in this country. It was done over 9 provinces. They had a proper sample. And then they did a retail audit of 2,000 stores, which they visited twice. And they gathered the information of brands, prices, and that's how they conduct.
And what's the shortfall in tax currently being paid?
Well, from the research, this year there's going to be 8 billion illegal cigarettes sold in this country. If you convert that into the tax rates, SARS this year alone will lose more than 7 billion rand conservatively. All
right, Mr. Nguni, do you accept the bona fides of this report?
Not at all, Jeremy. The reason being, firstly, as you indicated, it was commissioned by the Tobacco Institute of Southern Africa, which Mr. van der Merwe is the chair of.
But he also said that it was independent and robust, didn't he?
I mean, you can say it was independent and robust, but if you delve deeper into the report itself, you'll see that there were certain criteria which were excluded. For instance, they didn't attend to mobile hawkers, taverns, shebeens, and so forth. And then if you look further...
So why would you find problem with that?
The issue being that we don't have then... the report in itself is superficial. You know, and we predominantly, our manufacturers, our members, trade in the informal trade. So the fact that he's then, this report is omitted, a key component of our target market, shows that it cannot be said to be a thorough report. I mean,
it might not be thorough, but even if this particular sector, and I acknowledge this sector is important, would the conclusion perhaps not have been much the same, though, that there is a problem with a slowdown in excise revenues from tobacco?
There definitely is, yeah. and we don't dispute that there is a problem. We're just reluctant to accept statistics which are produced or commissioned by another industry role player. We feel that a more independent party should be involved. For instance, government itself should undertake to undergo these studies.
You're shaking your head, Mr. van der Merwe.
Government should do the study, I agree with Sinan, but government doesn't. TISA is the only organization that invested in this and say, well, you can't get more independent than Ipsos. Methodology is robust. It's been peer-reviewed, independently validated, and that's what the research tells me. The reasons why mobile hawkers were excluded and shebeens and taverns was the problem with double counting, because they already get their product from somewhere, so you're going to pick it up twice. So it's a conservative study. The losses are probably much higher than the 7 billion that comes out of the study.
One of the claims, Mr. van der Merwe, that is made against the so-called legal tobacco trade in this country is that you're also underpaying as far as excise duties are concerned, that there are ways of getting around this particular example. We were speaking to a commentator a little earlier that said, for instance, it's easy to disguise the numbers. You can make, for instance, 2,000 cigarettes, but you only declare 1,000, and that there is as much underhand activity happening in the regulated or the controlled tobacco market as there is in the illicit or the illegal market. How do you respond to that?
Well, this is exactly the problem. The crime here is a crime of tax evasion. And we work on an honesty-based system. It's expected of manufacturers to declare...
But you're accepting that some of your members might also be culpable here?
No, that didn't come out in the research. Because what we said to them, you go into the market, regardless of brands. Tell us which brands sell below 17.85. Regardless of brands. So this is a problem of excise manipulation, because how is it possible that you can sell cigarettes by the billions for around 10 rand a packet and as low as 5 rand a packet?
Mr. Mguni, how do you respond to that?
Look, it's obviously interesting that the report having been commissioned by TISA and their members not being found to have been involved in any sort of non-compliance in terms of the tax laws, you have to be skeptical about the report. I have to say that as FITA as an organisation, we're compliant and we're not involved in any sort of tax evasion or anything which Mr. Van der Merwe sort of points fingers towards. I mean, SARS have on a number of occasions conducted audits on all our members, and up to now we have not had any issues in terms of being found to have been non-compliant with the laws.
Mr. Van der Merwe, let's pick up on an organisation called Gold Leaf Tobacco. Would they be one of your members?
They're not a member of us, no.
They also, according to this report, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, account for 75% of the illegal trade in this country. Is that true?
That was a surprise to us that they're so big, but that comes out of the Ipsos report, that one player is responsible for 75% of all cigarettes sold below the tax rates in this country.
How can that be, do you think?
Well, that's exactly the problem. That's where SARS must go and investigate, because how is it possible that so many billions of cigarettes can be sold below the tax rate, but yet you say the taxes are being paid?
The argument, of course, is that this was simply done by organised tobacco, in other words, British American tobacco, for instance, simply to undermine and to undercut Gold Leaf.
The problem
that there was an ulterior motive, in other words, in commissioning this research in the first place.
No, sir. The problem is there's a problem with illicit trade, well publicized in this country. So we were the first to say, well, let's measure it. Let's take the first step and measure it. And it was shocking to see that 8 billion cigarettes
I accept the point,
sold.
but it does stack the case against one of organised tobacco's biggest bugbears, and that is Gold Leaf Tobacco.
So the companies not members of TISA are not small companies. They are big companies, big corporates. The question remains, and that is the question that Sinan must ask for his members, is how do you explain so many cigarettes sold to consumers below the tax rates and then say you're compliant? It is simply not possible. This is admitted by SARS in the SARS inquiries. It was said that under the Moyane era, investigation stopped, illicit trade flourished, it flooded the market. How is it possible to say you're compliant, but so many products sell below 1785?
But it would be in your members' best interests to see the demise of Gold Leaf, wouldn't it?
No, sir. What we want to see is the demise of a playing field that is not level. Let's compete on a fair playing field where everybody pays their taxes, and then companies must compete on their brands, their price strategies, their availability of products, their distribution channels. Just make the playing field.
I accept the argument, but I will come back at you and also say that it's not the first time, for instance, that BAT or Imperial Tobacco has been accused of underhand activities in trying to cut the knees of your competitors, and perhaps this report is simply one of those.
So there's no underhand here. It's open, it's in the public. What we're saying is, how is it possible that so much cigarettes in the market is sold below the tax rates? That's as simple as that. There's nothing underhanded about that, because that makes it you can't compete. Simply you can't compete by paying taxes and paying prices 25, 30, 36 rand and compete against brands in the market for 10 rand. It is simply not possible to compete.
Do you accept that argument?
I don't at all. It's clear that Francois doesn't have an answer to your question. Firstly, he makes mention of the fact that the illicit cigarette issue has been prevailing in the media for a number of years, and that's only because of his organization's doing. They've been feeding the public this narrative that there's a massive illicit trade problem in South Africa. You have to delve deeper and look at the tobacco industry worldwide and realize that this narrative has been spun all over the world, where legislation is changing towards ensuring that multinationals have no influence over government. There's a Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which is a World Health Organization initiative. And they state that multinationals, which are the members of the Tobacco Institute of South Africa, should have no influence over policy, and of which the illicit trade is one of. And I think they're trying to use marketing and trying to get public sympathy to deviate from other policies which, for instance, the Minister of Health is trying to introduce, such as plain packaging, which will level the playing field. You also have then, I've read in this report that they're trying to then request that the government put a stop to the increase in excise, which obviously would suit their narrative. So again, as I said earlier, you have to look at this report from where it comes from. Another thing that Francois mentions, which is the leveling of the playing field. What I wanted to say in that regard is he must then look at the current status quo in the market where our members aren't allowed. We're in the informal trade because we aren't allowed to trade in retail stores because they have these agreements with retail stores where they, in essence, ensure that retailers do not source other products from other manufacturers by offering them prices which they will say
sounds very unfair to me,
competitive.
Mr. Van der Merwe. Are you shutting out the smaller players in this respect?
Jeremy, the answer here is definitely no. If you think there's discrimination against you in the market, go to the Competition Commission, go and lay a complaint.
Fair point. Why haven't you done that?
We are actually in the process of doing that. We've prepared a complaint which we will be taking to the Competition Commission.
And on the pricing, Jeremy, there's one simple question to be answered here. How do you sell cigarettes below the tax rates? That's the only thing that there is. There's nothing underhanded.
I have two quick questions to ask. Then, regrettably, we have to finish this debate. I sense we could go all afternoon on it. Indeed. The one thing which I haven't got clarity from the Tobacco Institute is concerned is the possible under-declaration of manufacturing figures. Are you saying to me that that is not happening, or it could be happening? I need clarity on that.
I'm saying that under-declaration is why we have a 7 billion deficit.
But under-declaration as far as your members are concerned?
No. The answer is no.
It's not happening.
Some of my members import fully their products, and we have one member manufacturing. But the answer is clear. If there's a suspicion that there's something wrong, then go and audit. And that's why we say to SARS, put SARS officials in factories immediately, including my members.
And speaking on behalf of your members, they would be prepared to open their books in that respect. Should this television channel, for instance, want to go and audit those figures?
Yes, sir. You're
happy
more
for
than
us
welcome.
to do that?
More than welcome.
In terms of the under-declaration?
In terms of the under-declaration.
A final question to both of you then. Do you have confidence with the new incarnation of the South African Revenue Service that this can be righted now, that there is perhaps the potential for a better investigative process? Because you've both accepted that there is a problem in a slowdown in excise duty. Are you happy now that SARS is perhaps better equipped, better led in order to facilitate some sort of change?
I think so. I mean, we've been engaging. Both our organisations have been engaging SARS by way of the Tobacco Industry Forum. And we've, in essence, stated to SARS, I see there's a big emphasis around only the collection of excise duty. Compliance is a far wider sort of a machinery in that it's not only excise duty, you have to look at other sources of tax, VAT, income tax and so forth, and stretch the net wider. Francois just indicated that some of these entities are foreign-owned and they only import into South Africa. We have to look at that and the methods of tax avoidance schemes, which they have been alleged to have been engaging in other countries. And we've directed that to SARS to say, look, this is not, we don't only look at excise, we have to look at compliance on a wider scale.
Fair point. Just a quick one then, Mr. Van der Merwe, from you. Are you confident then that SARS is perhaps on a better footing given the changes that are happening at the service?
Unequivocally, yes. We would like to give the new SARS Acting Commissioner the commitments he made in Parliament, the intentions of putting investigative units back on track again. Absolutely, yes. We believe there's a much better chance now, but there's a need for speed.
Appreciate the debate. Thank you very much indeed. Sinihlanhla Mnguni, chairperson of the Fair Trade Independent Tobacco Association, along with Francois van der Merwe, who represents the Tobacco Institute of Southern Africa.